We didn't have computers to help us at school. I don't know why you guys complain so much. Have you ever had that thought flash through your mind when your teen is grumbling about their schoolwork or exams? That little voice, that comparison to back in our day, that right there is what I call an educational echo. I'm Narelle and this is Talking Teens. And these educational echoes, these lingering impressions from our school days, are what we're diving in today. Because while they often come from a place of wanting to relate or offer a perspective, they can sometimes create more confusion than clarity. The core message I want us to explore is this: our own school stories and experiences are not necessarily going to be our children's reality, because the world and education itself is vastly different now than what it was 20 or 30 years ago, when many of us were navigating those hallways. It's not just about how we did our homework without Google. Think about it. When many of us were finishing school, the paths forward often felt pretty straightforward. For a lot of us, it was get a job, go to university, learn a trade, or for many young women especially, the expectation was to settle into traditional family roles. The options often felt quite defined compared to today. And then you look at the world our teens are in. The internet has made it a much smaller place. In many ways, they can learn about anywhere, connect with anyone, dive into any topic imaginable with just a few clicks. The sheer volume of information and the diverse ways they can learn is truly mind-boggling compared to what most of us experienced. But it's not just the external world of information that's different. It's also what's happening inside their still developing brains. The prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for focus and good judgment, which sits right at the front of the brain, behind the forehead, it's still under construction, with research showing significant development in the prefrontal cortex continues well into the early to mid-20s. For some, about 50% of the population, namely males, their prefrontal cortex can still be developing even towards the age of 30. So teenagers are often working with completely different wiring than we are as fully mature adults. Now, imagine that developing brain trying to cope with the sheer volume of information, the constant pings, the endless scroll of social media and short videos that many kids are immersed in today. It can really struggle. I know a lot of adults who can even struggle with sensory overload. It's like all your 5 senses are being hit at the same time. Well, this happens for most teachers in a classroom anyway. The noise, the bright lights, the smells. Remember, I teach high school? There's all kinds of smells emanating from our rooms. Scientists call this sensory overload, when the brain gets more input than it can comfortably process. It can trigger stress, anxiety, and real difficulty concentrating. And this is what is happening to our kids. They are on sensory overload for a good part of their waking hours. The downtime they're having isn't physically downtime at all. Their brains are still being stimulated and even hit when they are in their rooms because they're on their phones, they're listening to music, they're playing games, scrolling socials, talking to their friends, all while spraying their favourite perfume or aftershave. This is where my idea of declining fire-gazing time becomes so important. Our ancestors might have had hours just staring into a fire, letting their minds wander and process. Even we, as adults, might have had more time for daydreaming when we were kids growing up without always being connected to the internet. But today's kids, they often leap from one quick hit of stimulation to the next. That constant on state can mean very little of that quiet, reflective, do-nothing time, the very time where boredom can spark creativity and deeper thought. So when we as parents see what looks like a decline or maybe a shorter attention span, less interest in things we valued, or even challenging behaviours, it might not be a decline in their ability or in the standards at all. It could very well be a brain simply overwhelmed, a creative spirit starved of that essential fire-gazing downtime, a young person struggling to find focus in a hyper-stimulated world. But I digress. Back to those educational echoes. Let me give you a couple of examples of how these educational echoes can play out based on what I've seen over the years. First, there's what I call the social trauma echo. This is when a parent had a really tough social experience at school, maybe more than one. Maybe they were bullied or felt like an outcast, or they were seen as different. Those experiences live long in the memory and the feelings linger. So when their own teenager mentions even a minor social hiccup, those old parental feelings and fears can get triggered. This can lead to an overprotective parenting style. Maybe they keep their child home more often than necessary. Or maybe they're frequently contacting the school about issues that might seem trivial to others, all driven by that deep-seated desire to shield their child from the pain they once felt. Then there's the outdated success echo. This is a big one. It's when parents apply their, back in my day, definition of success to their teenagers. For many of us, this was very linear. It was a traditional path. It was get good grades at school, to get into a good uni, to get into a good job, which leads to a good car and a good house. That was the script for a successful life. And anything outside that, like choosing a trade after year 10, might have been seen as unsuccessful. But that echo is clashing hard with today's reality. Students now see the massive cost of that university degree and question if it's really worth it. They see tradespeople earning fantastic money without huge debt. They are surrounded by new career paths, jobs we haven't even heard of 15 years ago, and they see the rising cost of everything, making them wonder, what's the point of that old script? So when a parent is still pushing that traditional straight A's or you're failing narrative, it's an echo that their teenager might not even recognise as being successful anymore. So why do these educational echoes matter so much? What's the impact on our teenagers? Well, when a parent is operating from a social trauma echo, overprotecting their child, it can have a couple of opposing effects. Some teens might internalise that fear and become timid, shy, and unable to speak or advocate for themselves, essentially losing their own voice and just doing what they're told because that feels safest. They might even need an outside advocate to help them navigate. Others might react with secrecy and rebellion, pushing back against the perceived control to prove they're fine and don't need that level of protection. And with that outdated success echo, some teens, feeling they can never meet those perhaps misaligned expectations, might just disengage and appear to do nothing, or even go in a completely opposite, sometimes self-destructive direction. Others might knuckle down, they might get the grades, get into the right course, only to find themselves deeply unfulfilled years later, and perhaps switching careers or just feeling a quiet sense of dissatisfaction with a life path that was never truly theirs. These are often the extremes, but the underlying pressure is very real. Okay, so how do we start tuning these educational echoes and offer support that's actually relevant to our teenagers today? The first and perhaps hardest step is the one that involves looking inward. As I often say, and it's a tough one, sometimes we need to deal with our own issues, our own past traumas, or unresolved school experiences first. Acknowledge that those echoes are our story, not necessarily theirs. Once we start that self-awareness journey, the next crucial step is to let our teens be and truly listen to them, hear what they're saying. And this means listening more than we speak. It means when they want to share something, we listen to respond with understanding, not to immediately react with our own story or a quick fix. Keep that communication channel open, but remember, it's okay if they don't want to talk all the time. No one does. And underpinning all of this is the foundational commitment to just let them be. Keep them alive, keep them home, keep them loved. Creating that secure base allows them the safety to explore who they are. And when we as parents commit to this kind of self-awareness and this deeper way of listening, when we consciously decide to tune out our own outdated educational echoes and truly tune in to our teenager, we're doing more than just simply improving communication. We're actually helping them on their journey of self-discovery. Sir Ken Robinson often emphasised that true education is about helping individuals connect with their unique intrinsic talents and passions. By managing our echoes, we create the space for our teenagers to more clearly hear their own inner voice and discover the path that's authentically theirs, not just a repeat of our own. So the key takeaway from our discussion on educational echoes is this: your teenager is navigating a school world and stepping into a future that's vastly different from the one you knew. By consciously tuning out of those educational echoes from our past, we're giving them the most powerful gift, the space to write their own story. This opens up room for a clearer, more genuine connection with them today, allowing us to truly listen, honour their unique path, and support them as they build their own confident journey into a future we perhaps can't even fully imagine what that looks like yet. Next time on Talking Teens, we'll delve into another sensitive, often unseen dynamic. Those times when parents might feel the need to take matters into their own hands and confront school staff, sometimes without their kid even knowing. We'll explore the hidden impacts of these confrontations and discuss more constructive ways to address these concerns. Until then, remember that focus: connection over correction. You're listening to Narelle, and this is Talking Teens.